Unbelievable! Howard Berg, the world's fastest reader in the Guinness Book of Records, demonstrates his mega reading technique on national TV.
And you read this. You read this. Anybody who gets this course from yours can do what you just did.
You already have the ability. I'm just showing you how to release it.
Now, unlock your natural ability to quadruple your reading speed and remember everything you read with the amazing Mega Reading Home Study Course. Anyone can learn the amazing mega reading secrets of the world's fastest reader. There's nothing else like it. In less than 4 hours, you'll become a mega reader too.
Folks, you heard this. You can call right now, get Howard's program. It takes just a few short hours. It's easy, it's fun, anybody can do it. It'll be the greatest conversationalist. Kids get straight A's with less study time. You'll make more money in business because you'll be able to remember all the information.
Well, let's review our full text in Luke chapter 24. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men told them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you, while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they didn't believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Now that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened here in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not see." He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he broke bread. He took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the 2 told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. So today is the day that more people than at any other time normally celebrate the most important event in human history. Because our religious movement set out to attempt back in the early 1800s to do only those things that we could see the church doing in the decades immediately following this event, our congregations have usually avoided any kinds of religious rituals other than the Lord's Supper and baptism. And we don't even tend to think of those as rituals, and we don't do them in a very ritualistic way, but we do think of those two things as essential to following the example of the first followers of Jesus. Now, if we claim that we don't celebrate Easter, or if we are accused of not celebrating Easter, here's the irony. Both of those things are all about Easter. The reason that we feel it is so important to observe the Lord's Supper every week is because Jesus told his closest followers that it was to remind us that his sacrifice was necessary to make it possible for us to have new life by internalizing his body and blood. Our own baptism symbolizes the death and the burial and resurrection of Jesus, and our promise to offer our bodies as living sacrifices in the same way that Jesus did. That's what it means to have new life through his Spirit living in us. So we started our focus on this event as it was described by Luke last week. And if we were hearing this story for the first time, after hearing everything that led up to this event, we might have been a little surprised by the surprised followers of Jesus. I mean, after all, they had seen Jesus perform all sorts of signs that proved that he was not limited in the ways that others were. They had even seen him raise others from the dead. He had said that he was going to die. He had even described exactly how it would happen. He had said that he would be raised on the third day. And now it was the third day. But it seems that not even one of them expected it to actually happen. Although we see Jesus showing mercy and compassion for most people that he encountered during his ministry, we certainly don't think of him as harsh and judgmental. Jesus doesn't soften his words at all in this case. He doesn't say, now, I know this has never happened before, and I understand why you're having a bit of a struggle grasping this. I mean, who can blame you? It's never happened before. It was only natural that you assume that I could not really die. I always spoke in parables and figures of speech, and so, maybe you just thought it was one of those, and how could you think that I would die on a Roman cross and still be the one who would save the Jews from the oppression of the Romans and even set up a kingdom that would never end? All of this is going to take a little time, but no one could be expected to accept this immediately. Now, that's not the way Jesus talked. Jesus just straight out called them foolish. And we took a look last week at how foolish we can be and the most dangerous consequence of our foolishness, which is the loss of hope. These two disciples said, we had hoped that he was the one. But Jesus didn't just stop at calling them foolish for not expecting this to happen, because it was really worse than that. Even after it happened, and the first reports, remember, from the women had been made, and Jesus joined this Cleopas and another unnamed follower and walked 7 miles with the two of them, talking about why this all had to happen, they were still unenlightened. And Jesus called them slow, which is not a compliment, but it was worse than that. He identified this as a heart problem. How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe. We must believe that God did not and will not fail. What is it that keeps us from overcoming our foolishness? Why can't we get past this? What is it that keeps us from being enlightened? How can we get smarter, faster in the future? Let's get smarter, as we focused on last week, and let's do it faster. Think about Jesus' disciples, the problem that they had. They had seen him heal the sick. He cast out demons. He walked on water. He fed a potential army of 5,000 men with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And he even raised the dead. Why didn't they believe the women when the angels told them that he had risen? Before we label these guys as dense, and Jesus was known to use that term at least once, but before we use it in a self-righteous way, we better take another look at ourselves. Aren't we a little slow of heart to believe? How many scrapes do we have to survive? How many prayers have to be answered before we will believe the next time? Have you ever shared those, times was rough stories? You know, um, Here's mine. After we lost our support when we went to Germany to work as missionaries, we came back to the States, and I didn't have a really good job, and times was rough. How rough were they? Well, I'll tell you how rough they were. It was so rough that I had an adjusted gross income that was really gross. Only $3,500, not $35,000, $3,500 for the whole year. It was so rough that we tried to eat on $15 a week with a family of four. It was so rough that since Jeremy was a baby and we could get this women and infant children program that offered free milk and cheese and baby formula, well, the woman with the infant child was nice enough to share the milk and cheese with me, but we had no use for the baby formula because she was nursing. So we didn't want to waste it, so we tried it in recipes. I tried making homemade ice cream with baby formula. I don't recommend it. Yet during all of that, we never once went without a meal. We never once didn't have a home. There was never any real long-term threat to our security at all. As my income illustrated, I wasn't providing much of anything, but God provided pretty well. So since then, whenever we've been faced with any financial strains, it hasn't bothered us at all. Right? Wrong. I would get depressed and tense at the same time, and it affects everything that I do. So how slow of heart are we to believe? We've seen his promises fulfilled. We've known his care. But sometimes, we just think we have to just do it all ourselves. And we have about as many doubts as we have problems. The biggest problem, of course, is death or aging. Or you might say that the biggest problem is really salvation. When we die, will he have forgiven every sin? Do we really have nothing to fear from death? If we give up our lives for others, will we really get a new and improved life? The only solid evidence for the promise of future life is what is happening now in regard to other things. We can't see the before and after sides of death in the most literal sense of the word. When we give up our lives for Christ, our bodies don't immediately die, so we don't see the fulfillment of the promise of the resurrection in that sense. Yet the reliability of that promise should be judged on the basis of the promises that we can see fulfilled. Giving up the life of your body is not the primary way that Christians give up their lives. Some Christians' bodies are killed because of their faith. Some Christians offer their bodies as a sacrifice, as some medical personnel are doing even right now. But relatively few will actually die for their faith. But all Christians do give up their lives. All followers of Jesus take up their crosses and follow him to their deaths. How do most of us do that? Well, we do it by sacrificial love, acts of love. Love is the giving of your life to others. See, this life consists of all that we have to give. When I give someone my time, am I not giving them some of my life? Have you ever gone to a movie and come out and said, well, there's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back? When I give energy, am I not using up some of my life? When I am concerned and I hurt for someone, doesn't that stress, even if I shouldn't feel it, affect how much life I might have left? Even when I give material things, I have put time and energy into getting those, and so I am giving life. So Jesus has promised that we would receive more back than we gave, 100 times more. How does God keep that promise? Well, when we give our lives, what do others actually receive? They receive something that we couldn't have kept anyway. If we hadn't given it to them, it would have been taken away at some point anyway. You won't have any more life because you refuse to give your life to others, will you? In fact, those who refuse to love, even apart from a faith in God, live shorter lives rather than longer ones, statistics seem to indicate. So when we give of what was only ours temporarily, others receive something that is only temporary. And they might live longer because of our gift, because of our love for them, but they won't live forever unless they follow our example and give their lives. But when we do give life, God gives life back in return. But the life he gives back is not temporary. What he gives back is lasting. When we love others because we love God, we are repaid with a much better quality of life. In other words, we are raised from the waters of baptism, the death of our old life, you might say, to a life without limits. This is something you will see the evidence for even during this life. I mean, you can know that it is true because you can experience your life becoming fuller as you give more, when you would expect it to perhaps do just the opposite. See, logically, you would expect that the more you give, the less that you have to give. But you and I know that when we apply this principle, it doesn't work that way, when we give in a sacrificial way, as Jesus did. So, as the disciples finally said, it is true. It is true. Jesus is no longer dead. He has been raised. Think about this. Satan is not omniscient. Satan is not an equal to God, just, an evil God. That's called dualism. We don't believe that. Satan is not omniscient. He's not omnipotent. He's not omnipresent. He's none of those things that make God who he is. He has a lot of power. But Satan may have actually thought that he had won when he managed to get people to be jealous of Jesus, to hate him, to lie about him, to abuse him, to spit on him, and to kill him. Satan must have thought that things were going well when even Jesus' disciples thought it was all over. But death's hold on Jesus was very temporary. Jesus gave up what he had for us, but he rose again. God did not and will not fail. And yet, we are so foolish. We are so slow of heart to believe. Jesus loves us anyway. He loves us enough to walk with us and even find us wherever we are as we are going, just as he did with Cleopas and this other disciple. Fill in your name as the other disciple with Cleopas. And understand that Jesus is always going to come to you if you want to believe. And he's going to try once again to explain what he was up to and why things must happen the way that they must. He wants us to know that it's true, even though we don't deserve that comfort, even though we so often refuse to live by faith. So anyone who is wise, any one of us can make the wise choice to believe that he has the power and the desire to give us this new life, no matter how we've wasted the old.